Hey, welcome and hello. This is Ann Dickinson. I'm Chief Visionary of Eye on Your Business, and I want to welcome you to my free masterclass, Are Expenses Killing Your Profits? I've got a simple solution for reducing expenses. Before we get started, I want to just take a second and acknowledge that you've taken the time and interest in learning this valuable information and applying it to how you run your business. And dealing with this crazy expense stuff and really getting a handle on how to manage them can be a pain in the butt. But doing it is essential. I mean, let's face it, this falls in the category of working on your business. And for so many of us, that's just not a favorite nor necessarily comfortable thing to do. So I really applaud you for recognizing it as a requirement and owning a business. It is so easy to get caught up in working in your business and just really comfortable ignoring working on your business to make it as healthy and profitable as it could be. And in the process, becoming the real CEO of your company and not just the person who owns it. So we're going to talk about how expenses might be killing your profits. And before we get into that, I want to just give you a little bit of background about, why am I the one doing this? Who the heck am I? And so I got to tell you, my entrepreneurial journey actually started in the third grade when I baked and sold cookies door to door to earn money for my first bicycle. It was a 1-speed banana seat number that I rode all over town and was so excited to have. But that was the third grade, and life kept moving on, and so I went ahead and finished school, went on and got a bachelor's degree, and found a job, and ended up spending 15 years in large companies in high tech and defense industries, in roles in finance and operations. And along the way, I picked up a master's degree in business. So I was with high tech companies. And after that, I went to this small consulting firm called Claymore Partners Limited, and we were brought into failing companies by the banks to analyze their operations, generate as much cash as possible, and really prepare the business for sale. And it was a fantastic experience because I learned about companies down to the nuts and bolts and nickels and dimes. The kind of bummer part of it was that it was 100% travel, and all of the employees in these companies that I ran into were unhappy because the companies were in really, really rough shape. So that eventually pushed me to make a change. And, as all good former corporate people do, I started a pottery studio and made the leap back to entrepreneurship. I became a working artist. And the studio itself was very successful. It was profitable in 18 months. It was debt-free in 5 years, which is pretty unheard of for studios. We had 18 or 20 people renting space from us, and a custom-built kiln and some other kilns. And it was super fun developing the business plan and getting the funding for me. I mean, it just was a blast. That said, my own pottery, I was kind of a mediocre potter, and this is a particularly awful picture. But along with that, at the same time, I was dealing with functional blindness, this crazy thing called benign essential blepharospasm. And I'll let you consult with Dr. Google to find out what that is. But suffice to say that random blindness, it's really not helpful in developing work in a visual medium. But aside from that, I was watching that many of my fellow artists were failing as entrepreneurs. And it was because they couldn't understand or manage the business stuff. I mean, even if I sometimes couldn't see, that was still hard to watch. So eventually I realized that my primary interest in talent and skill, it wasn't so much in making pottery, but it was in making businesses work better. And frankly, it turns out it was more personally fulfilling. So in 2009, I started my consulting firm that is now known as Eye on Your Business. Pardon me. And it is my mission to work with action-taking owners of established small to medium-sized service businesses and help them get more money, in the form of profits and cash flow, find, which equates to less stress, and get more freedom, which we all know is priceless. It's all about improving cash flow and profits one business at a time. And it is so stinking cool that the work I do can make such a huge impact. I had a client who was losing money on nearly every sale he made, flipped that around to making money on all of his sales. And how did he do it? He did it by learning what his true expenses and costs were and pricing for profit. My client Molly made a simple tweak to their operations that ended up helping them jump up their revenue by $1 million in the first year of working with me. I mean, it's just pretty darn cool. Now, I'm not going to stand here and promise that you'll walk away from our time together today, brief as it is, empowered to do that for yourself. But I can promise you that you'll have some concrete ideas to take and apply to your business right away. So today, we're talking about costs and expenses. Okay. Try to contain your excitement. I know, don't be jumping up and down. You might fall. But seriously, not knowing about your costs will cost you in the end. All puns intended. So you are in the right place if you know your business can be more profitable. You know in your gut it can be, and you don't understand why it isn't. You're in the right place if your sales are going up, but that dang bank account keeps going down. I mean, what in the blazes is up with that? And you're in the right place if you simply don't understand the numbers like you should. They freak you out. And they make you just super anxious. Today, you're going to learn what the different kinds of expenses are and how to evaluate them. Because not all expenses are created equal. You're going to learn how to analyze and really understand whether to incur your next expense. Should you? Shouldn't you? How do you make that decision? You're going to learn how going through this process can save you boatloads of money and increase your profits. Whether or not you like boats. It could be a pile of money. Now, not to be a downer, but because I care about you, even though, you may be a stranger, if you don't get a handle on what you're going to learn today, here's what I can tell you. It's very possible you will slowly and painfully possibly go out of business over a long period of time, or it could even be a short period of time. You're likely to keep feeling like you're working super hard, and yet you can't afford to go out for a nice meal once in a while. What kind of bummer is that? That the amount of stress in your life will impact your physical health, your relationships. And, quite frankly, some people come to me almost nutso, and I want to save you from that. I know this may sound exaggerated and slightly facetious, but it's a busy world. And I really want you to know what can happen if you don't plug your profit leaks and deal with your expenses. We got a lot to cover in a short period of time. I know this is a super busy season for people. I'm not going to, take up too much of your time. But I'm going to teach you as much as I can in the limited time we have together. And before we conclude, I promise to show you how you can take it further if that's something you want to do. So why are we doing this? I mean, so what? Expenses, big hairy deal. Well, the truth is that knowing this supports having a much healthier company. And that means being better able to withstand both the downturns as well as high growth. I talked a minute ago about sales going up and up and up, but bank accounts going down. It supports having stronger profits, moolah being the technical term. And it supports having a whole lot lower stress level for you and your employees. When you get right down to it, if you don't know specifically and in a detailed way what you're spending money on, how can you know if you're making any money? Crazy, huh? Well, it turns out that all businesses share a lot in common. And this may feel simplistic, but it is a truth. All businesses involve products or services, processes, and people. Anyone who watches the Profit Show on CNBC with Marcus Lemonis knows this, and he's right. Yeah, sure, there's a different subject matter for every business. Well, maybe not every business. A law firm seems to look different than a landscaping firm. A coaching business is different than a roofing company. The puzzle pieces may differ in certain ways, but the overall fundamental business ingredients, sloppily mixing my metaphors, sorry about that, have many similarities, and a truth for all gets actually to one of my core philosophies. And that is that most business consultants think that viewing a company from just a 30,000-foot level is enough to make changes, but that really doesn't work. I know you need to have both a 30,000-foot and a 3-foot view. And as I like to say and live by, if I know how it's built, I can fix it. So let's talk expenses. And let's start by looking at and understanding what kinds of expenses are there. That stuff you have to pay for, your bills. Things like marketing expenses, bookkeeping, computer expenses, labor, shipping. I already said marketing, I'll say it again, marketing expenses. All the different kinds of things that money gets spent on as an expense. And there's another thing that's involved, and I want to bring up, and that is the concept of time. Some of you might not yet think about time as an expense, but it is one. Because for everything you're spending time on, you really are spending money. So in other words, time is a cost, or at the very least, it has a significant effect on cost. And we're going to get into that a little bit deeper as we go along. So there's all sorts of different expenses that your company may incur. Excuse me 1 second, I want to take a sip of water. And we want to categorize them so that we can deal with them more effectively. And there are really two major buckets that company expenses fall into. One is labeled direct, and the other is labeled overhead. Now, I know there are some possibly on the line who may want to go more granular than that. But for today, these are really the two buckets we're filling. And the two buckets that do make up the whole of expenses within a company. So let's start by looking at this thing called direct expenses. And into this bucket go all costs, all expenses that happen when a sale is made. I'm going to say that again. Into the direct bucket go all expenses that happen when a sale is made. If the sale doesn't get made, these expenses don't happen. So let's go a little deeper in this and look at an example of a service business. And let's say it's a coach or a consultant, because I know there are a lot of you in that genre of business on the line. So if we look at a consultant or coach and think about what expenses are incurred when the sale is made, right? And it could be in terms of one-to-one consulting, it could be group consulting, it could be online consulting, group face-to-face. You know, are you preparing specific materials? There's certainly client time. There's that administrative stuff to get them up and running. That could be the transcription of notes. It could be recording your consulting or coaching sessions. It can be everything associated with client intake. Any supporting technology that happens specific to when a sale is made. You need to know what and how much these expenses are to really determine how much of this thing called gross profit that you have. And I don't want to freak anyone out with technical terms, but gross profit is one that you'll end up learning over time. And that's really what's the difference between what something is sold for, the price of it, and what your direct expenses are. In other words, those expenses that happen when the sale is made. In other words, how much money do you have left after you made the sale? Are your products and services actually profitable at the gross profit level? Like, how many of you on the line don't know if you offer a group program, do you know if it's profitable? I mean, think about this. You think a ballpoint pen manufacturer knows if that ballpoint pen is profitable? The thing is, if they don't, how will they know if they should say yes to an order of 1 million pens? Likewise, how will you know if you should say yes to an order of 100 people in your group program if you don't know if it's profitable? You know, this is all about understanding direct expenses. And when I work more closely with people, we get into the details of this in somewhat, you know, some might say excruciating detail. And so let's look at another little piece of this whole puzzle. And that is, you know, what if you hold events or retreats periodically? What are the direct expenses associated with that? Well, I have a client, Sarah, and she holds retreats twice a year. And when we have worked together, the truth is she was capturing all those expenses, but they weren't organized into a direct bucket. You know, the things like the cost for the venue and the food and the admin support for the event. They don't happen if that event doesn't take place. And so they really belong in the direct bucket, because the direct bucket is then used to understand, you know, are you making money on this thing that you're selling? So what we did was we, you know, rejiggered her profit and loss statement so that those direct expenses, you could tell, was this event actually making money? Should I continue to have it? Right? So understand that cost organization, you know, that is the issue of accurate categorization. Is it a direct expense? It should be in a direct bucket. It's an important piece of providing actionable information in improving the health of your business. Because it's about having actionable information. I mean, looking at all these numbers, for those of you who get freaked out when you look at them, it's not about getting you freaked out. It's about making sure that you've got information that is useful to you so you can make better decisions. Right? So this is about the relationship of cost or expense to price. Does what it costs me to deliver my product or service in relation to what I charge for it result in profits and cash and business health? Because if it doesn't, I got to look at why it doesn't and what can I do about it. Is my pricing off? Are the costs associated with it out of whack? Is it a combination? You know, what's going on? The bottom line, for someone like Sarah who holds these events and retreats, if she spends more on her retreat than she makes, you know, she's going to be going out of business fast or slow. It's all painful. And you need to know what your expenses are to avoid this. We want to be making money. We want our businesses to be creating money, not using money. So those are direct expenses. The other bucket that we mentioned is this thing called overhead. And that includes all of the costs that happen whether or not you make a sale. What does it cost basically to keep the doors open, even if there are no sales? We're talking things like rent, insurance, utilities, bookkeeping, telephone, Dropbox if you use it, Zoom, which I'm using today, Infusionsoft or any other CRM program. What is it that gets what categories of things get spent? I'm slaughtering the grammar on this. I apologize. Whether or not you make a sale. What does it cost you to keep the doors open? It's important to know what that money is being spent on and how much it is and adds up to on a monthly and annual basis. Because these two categories of expenses, direct and overhead, are the key to figuring out ways to increase your profits. But step one to getting there is to understand the two key categories of expenses. So if you think of your own company, your own business, you know, think of 3 of your expenses. And, you know, make them simple. They can be either direct or overhead, but, you know, let's say they're overhead because that can cover pretty much every business on the planet. You know, say it's rent and utilities and telephone. And keep them in mind as we move through the rest of this webinar. So what's next? We've categorized the stuff. The next piece of the puzzle is really answering the first of 4 questions, right? This whole thing is about expenses. Are they killing your profits? And so I take my clients through a series of 4 questions about expenses. specifically an expense that you're contemplating incurring. And these 4 questions are going to help you either decide not to spend it at all and not incur the expense, or minimize how much it's going to be. So here we go. The first question, and possibly the first among equals, is, does this expense directly contribute to revenue generation? If I spend this money, can I reasonably expect my revenue to be positively and significantly impacted? So let's look at a couple of examples that hopefully will clarify and illustrate this more. So, what about legal drafting software for a law firm? And drafting software or drafting documents is about creating them from scratch, right? If you've got a will, it's about writing up that will. And I have a client for which the option of the expense of installing and implementing legal drafting software, the answer is absolutely yes, it will contribute to revenue generation. Why? Because there's software that can dramatically cut the time needed to create those documents. I have a client who was creating them from scratch every time. So how does that help? It very specifically and directly increases profitability because it takes less time to get the work done. And in this particular case, my law client, they price their work as in packages versus on an hourly basis. But even on an hourly basis, this helps. And so they're able to get this work done more quickly, right? So they can go off and get more work. And each piece of work could be more profitable. So the answer is a resounding yes. Because as I said, it increases productivity. It frees up time to be used elsewhere, to get more clients, to spend time selling, to spend time marketing. Well, let's look at another example. Again, should this expense be incurred or not? If this expense is incurred, the question is, will it directly contribute to revenue generation? What about a new company logo? Well, a new company logo, it's nice to have, but truly the chances that it will directly result in new business, I submit, is near zero. I'm not saying it doesn't have its place. I'm saying it doesn't directly contribute to revenue generation. That's all I'm saying. So this is a really, really important question. And before we go on to the next question, take a second and think of a couple of your expenses. And answer the question, does it directly contribute to revenue generation that expense was incurred? So what's question number 2? Well, I'm glad you asked. Whoops. The second question is, does this expense we're contemplating have to happen now? Is there a real urgency to the issue? Really? Or is it a bright, shiny object situation? Again, let's look at some examples. Let's go back to that new logo. Does it have to happen now? I'm going with no. seriously, no. You know, if you look at this grid here of urgency versus importance, I maybe would get into an argument with branding people, but I'm going to say that the importance is in the 4 category and the urgency is in the 4 category quadrant. It doesn't have to happen now. It just doesn't. What about that drafting software? Is it a crisis timing thing? Yeah, maybe not. But in this case, it's the sooner the better. The sooner this happens, the better. Why? Because the sooner it happens, the sooner productivity increases, and the sooner productivity increases, the more sales can be gone after, and on and on and on. So, yeah, the answer is yeah, or yes. And this graphic, this urgency versus importance grid, it can be really helpful in sort of thinking these things through, if you're honest with yourself about what's on the docket. So let's look at the next question, which this should be a 3, not a 4. And for anyone who caught that, you get extra points. 6. You get 6 points. So the question here is, can the price be reduced? You know, is there a sale thing going on? Instead of $4,000, can you get the same thing for $3,000? And let's look at a kind of a wild and crazy illustration here. Example, just try and illustrate this. Look at a tractor for a farm. And no doubt this is the model I should get for my farm. Okay, fine. There's a perfect model of tractor to get. So the question then becomes, is there a sale coming up that you can wait for to lower the price? Gets back to the urgency issue. Is there one available used that is the exact same model, only already broken in? You know, can you possibly minimize the cash required through leasing instead of buying, or find a cheaper loan? But really, it's about the price. Can the price be reduced? So let's circle back around to that legal drafting software we've looked at. Like I said, looking at a sale, looking at it used, looking at a lease, looking at a different model. The drafting software. Again, is there a sale coming up? Does a sale ever happen on this stuff? Possibly a lease. Can you get a different configuration, which basically fewer seats of the same configuration of software? Do you need as many user licenses? So we've worked through 3 questions, even though there was a number 4 on there. That was just to test and see if you were awake. Because there is a 4th question. So on this drafting software, if we go through these 3 questions, I want you to keep a tally when you're going through your own expenses. First question is, does it directly contribute to revenue generation? The software, absolutely. And I would say in general, if the answer is yes, then move on to the second question and see what happens. If the answer to the first question is no, you really got a question moving on. But it's not going to be easy getting the final answer to be yes when the first answer is no, because, you know, how can I increase the revenue of my company? So there's one more question. And this is the real number 4. The other one was the fake number 4. And this question is there a less costly way to achieve the same result? This is not the same as, is there a lower price? In this context, keep in mind the basics of your business. It's product, process, and people. The question on the table here is, how can we achieve the same end result at less cost than the item we're currently considering? In fact, can we? It isn't about whether the item goes on sale. It's about looking at the issue differently and solving it with a different, less costly solution. So here's an idea. And as I said, product, process, and people. Here's an example to sort of hopefully tweak your thought process. Let's go back to the tractor. Right? There was a perfect model. But is there another way to solve the issue of we need a new tractor and we'd like to have this particular model, but is there another way to deal with it? Maybe some aren't as practical solutions, but they're all worth considering, right? It's about being creative without running through your cash. It's about thinking outside the box, to use a supremely overused phrase, right? So, can you repair the existing tractor? Maybe, probably cheaper. Can you borrow one from your neighbor? Maybe. That might put off having to get a new one for a long time. And thirdly, what about you look into some oxen pulling for your plow? As I said, it's about thinking outside the box. How else can something be done? And I have a client who implemented just such a creative solution, and they ended up lowering their overhead expenses by $5,000 a year. And that is not chump change. So this was an auto body shop, and they provided uniforms for all of their shop floor people. And the service that provided the uniforms also provided laundry. Well, it turns out that there's only one person out of 15 who ever brought their stuff in to be laundered. Nobody used it. So instead of using this laundry service, the decision was made, well, wait a second. We can go buy uniforms for people when they need them, and they can launder their own. And that resulted in $5,000 a year in savings. There was no laundry, and they bought the uniform pieces as they were needed. I give you another example, and this one, I don't have a slide for it, but it boggles my mind every time I think about it. A client who was in it's an environmental firm that does a lot of land reclamation. And in order, with the objective of trying to minimize injuries, because it's a very, very labor-intensive business, the owner was bringing in a yoga teacher to teach yoga to provide a yoga class to everyone on company time. So not only was the yoga teacher being paid for, but everyone in the company was getting paid to attend the yoga class, to the tune of about $3,500 a month. When you add in all the wages, yoga, time, etc. So there was a change made, and initially it was, okay, we'll provide yoga before work. And guess what happened? Nobody showed up. So now what is done is that there's a period of stretching, 5 or 10 minutes, that's done before each job. And they're still not having an issue with injuries, but are not spending $3,500 a month. I mean, that is one bucket load of money, speaking of buckets. You know, how many of you would like to find $5,000 a year in savings in overhead from just one thing, or $3,500 a month? This is the kind of thing that becomes possible when you ask the question, you know, am I leaking money from all my expenses? You work hard to bring in money, and your money deserves to stay in your business. You know, in other words, one of my favorite sayings, keep more of what you make. So I hope you're excited, because I am. And, you know, here's another example. Laura's an interior designer I worked with, and she was, you know, drib-drabbing expenses out the door a bit mindlessly. Really, really easy to happen. And implementing these questions, it made a huge impact on her business profitability and, frankly, her own productivity. And that's what I want for you. So, you know, what's next? You know, it's great you've avoided some of these expenses. The truth is, you know, this information is gold. All puns intended. But now what do you do with it? In a minute, I'm going to tell you how we can do more of that for you. It's just really one piece of the business puzzle. Solves a problem, but there's still more needed to run your business most effectively. You know, what really people get out of this is how to save money, how to spend less, how to not be taken by surprise by your bank account. You know, to feel more confident when you do spend something that is a smart idea. And then there's the ability to plan, you know, so you can save and keep more. So remember how I said to you I wanted to give you the key questions to manage your expenses so you can keep more money and give you as much as I could in the time we have? But that I also promised you that beyond that, once you've gotten a handle on your expenses and costs, that I'd share with you how you could learn to increase your profit and continue to do things like increase your cash flow. You know, overall help you feel like you have more financial well-being, and in fact have more financial well-being. You know, we've given you a big stepping stone on this. And that is that no business can make enough money, or no business owners will feel a moment of peace of mind if you don't have your handle on their expenses. So that's why I really chose the topic that I did. But if that's the only thing you do, you're still going to have issues around your money and your profit. So I hope you've been glad to be on this webinar to learn these expense questions. I'd be remiss if I didn't show you what else there is to do, because it's a little bit like giving you the first step in a stairwell, or the first part of a bridge to financial well-being, and, you know, like leaving you hanging on the unfinished bridge. It turns into a bridge to nowhere. So if you'll indulge me, I'm going to share with you the full system that we cover here at Eye on Your Business. And there are 5 steps. And what you've learned today really is integral to several of the steps. So I would hate to leave you with just today and not teach you how to really go big on how to get your income right. All right? So let's look at these 5 steps. The first step is take stock of where you are. And this whole step is about knowing, you know, where are you? What are you reviewing? How do you review it? Why the heck it matters? It's about those damn financial statements. Whoops, did I say that? You know, are yours up to date and in order? Do you even know what they are called and what the function is that each one serves? And more important than anything else, Do you know how to use the information in them most effectively? It's really not about just, hey, I have to have these for taxes, or because my bank requires them. It's about knowing what's in them and how to use that information to your best advantage. And step one, take stock of where you are. It's really a stake in the ground. Where really is your business right now? Are your financials actually in order and up to date? How well do you understand these statements and the invaluable information they can provide you? You know, so some of you came to this call with no idea of where your expenses are. And we've given you some questions to enable you to take stock of where you are. But it doesn't stop there. You know, another piece of it is how you're bringing money in, not just letting money leave. So nod your head to yourself if you understand that taking stock of where you are is incomplete if we just leave it at what we did today. You know, where's your income? Where's your revenue? Where's your profit? What's the stake in the ground? So step two is, what really are your costs? And again, you know, clearly this was a piece of that today, but I go even super deep when I work with people. It's getting into gross profit detail by product as well as by the whole business, right? I said earlier on today, if you don't know what your stuff costs, how can you possibly know if you're making any money? And the truth is that for companies with multiple product or service offerings, it is entirely possible that there may be one or two losing money and the rest of the products or services are subsidizing them. Do you even know if that's what's happening? Is that a conscious decision if it is? Should it continue for strategic reasons, or should it end? Because if you've got products that are losing money and products that are gaining money, are making money, and you eliminate the ones that are losing money, just eliminate them, don't even deal with raising prices or adjusting them. If you just eliminate them, your profit will go up. Think about that. But there are other ways to deal with it too. You know, we talked a lot about expenses today. And essentially looked at what's coming in the future. What are you going to spend money on in the future? How often do you review your expenses? You know, you may have a general idea what they are, but could you actually tell me in 3 months from now what your costs are? And it's a problem if you can't. And the reason it's a problem is if you don't know the answer, you don't know how much revenue you need. You might be in trouble in 3 months if you don't get a handle on that. Who wants to be in trouble in 3 months? Who wants to be in trouble in 3 weeks? Raise your hand. Who wants to be in trouble in a year? Raise your other hand. Right? Nobody. So what really are your costs? Answers much more than what we covered today. But what we did today, you know, again, definitely a step in the right direction. Speaking of steps, we're moving on to step 3. And that is, where does profit start? Because knowing in quantity and in dollars what's needed to be, as they say, in the in the black, it gives you real power and confidence. If I know that I can shrink how much it costs me to keep the doors open every month, right? If I can save $5,000 a year in overhead expenses, then maybe I only have to sell 8 things instead of 10 to start making a profit. Or that if I sell 12, I'll make that much more profit. And it's the same with small shifts in your gross margins, your gross profit. If I can create my service and have a higher gross profit, more money left over after the expenses, the direct expenses, then I'm going to be profitable sooner. It's all about break even. It's all about when does that heavenly profit begin and how can I make it start sooner or be bigger? And around about this time, I always think, oh man, I'm probably losing a couple. And it's because this is a really dry subject. It can be. But here's the deal. As dry a subject as all of this number stuff is, guess what? It doesn't involve calculus. We're talking addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. That's it. We're talking about taking little calculations and being able to use that information to your advantage. We're talking about making small tweaks that lead to big improvements. Think about an airplane that's on course, say from San Francisco to Boston. If that pilot makes a slight adjustment in where they're headed, they may land in Montreal instead of Boston, or they may land in Boston instead of Montreal. And all that took was a little teeny tiny tweak to their course heading. It's the same thing with business. So where does profit start? Step 4 is, where can you look in your business for more profit? How do you open your eyes to new opportunities for adding revenue? It's about finding areas to lower expenses. It's about, finding those hidden costs. We've talked about the 3 P's in business: product, process, and people. Well, they all provide opportunity for more profit, AKA the 4th P. I'll give you a real quick example. Worked with a client that was a limo company at one point. Well, was a client at one point. They were a limo company. And by switching from Lincoln Town Cars, when they had to get a new car, instead of getting a Lincoln Town Car, which it was kind of like, hey, it's always been a Lincoln Town Car, I should always get a Lincoln Town Car. By using a Toyota Avalon at the time, this was a few years ago, but by using a Toyota Avalon, which essentially was the same look and feel, same dimensions, yada, 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 they were able to lower their expenses by $15,000 per vehicle per year on what it costs to run that vehicle. That's about looking for more profits in different places. I have another client who had very seasonal businesses and added a third installation thing. Actually, it was backyard ice rinks that they could install in the fall, deinstall in the spring, install in the fall. It was an annuity. Added more revenue and smoothed out their cash flow. So how can you find more profit in your business? By looking broadly and deeply. And 5th, what do you keep your eyes on and why? This is about, you've made all these improvements, you've learned all this cool stuff to help you make decisions, but now what? What should you be reviewing on a regular basis and why? How do you build a checkup or diagnostic muscle to catch issues when they first start? And then look for opportunities. And I'm going to give you a real quick example. I know we're running through time here, but my client Julie was an estate attorney, and she and I were doing a monthly review of her work. And one month her revenue profile shifted dramatically. It went from estate, heavily weighted in estate work, and all of a sudden there was all this probate work. And probate is that stuff that happens after somebody dies. And it was like, whoa, that's interesting. And it starts the question, why did that happen? And what does it portend if it continues that way? And do I care? Well, the fact of the matter was she didn't like probate work, doesn't like probate work. And was also had 2 really big frustrations with it at the time when this review happened. One was there was a bookkeeping issue that hadn't been unsnarled yet and understood. And if you know anything about bookkeeping in law firms, it's not a cut and dried thing. There are layers to it. And so that issue was driving her nuts. And the other issue was that the court systems, the courts were, they are, in this context, just kind of a pain in the butt. So it's like, crap, what do we do about this? Overall, her revenue was actually higher, but, this shift was happening. And so she wanted to not do more. Her initial reaction was, I don't want to do any more probate work. I'll only do it for my own clients who die. I said, hold on a second. We identified the two issues. Both of them could be dealt with. The bookkeeping issue got resolved and understood and put in place. And the second issue around the courts, no, it wasn't something she could do. But the truth of the matter was, she actually herself was not dealing with them. It was her associate who was. And didn't have as big of an issue with them. And then when you backed into it and looked at this probate work, it was really quite profitable work. But it wasn't something that they wanted to advertise per se, and that's okay. But we determined that, hey, we're not going to turn this business away. It's good, profitable business. So, but the point is that because we were doing regular reviews, this squirted out like immediately. And the questions got asked right away and resolved, and a plan to move forward was hatched very quickly. And it's about, what are you looking at and how often? So I would ask you, what are you reviewing in your business regularly? And why? So we blew through a lot of info in a short period of time. And, raise your hand to yourself if you feel like we've covered something of substance today. Raise it high so your neighbor can see it. I can see it sort of through cyberspace. Because in a minute, I'm going to ask you to take action. Because I'm not here just for inspiration. And I can only hope that I am inspiring. But this becomes something that you actually implement in your business. And so I'm hoping that you'll be willing to take action now in the next 10 minutes to strengthen your business and improve your profits and cash flow. So, are you willing to look at the next expense decision by asking the 4 questions before deciding? And stopping, taking a breath to think about the decision before you go forward. This is a lot of material. I know it can be hard to make changes, especially when you're not sure really exactly what to do first. So I decided to offer something pretty cool just for the folks on this webinar. The truth is, you guys are the action takers and leaders, and I want to help you get the results you deserve in your business. So here's what I'm going to do. As you can tell, I hope, I like this stuff. Call me weird. I prefer you call me Ann. My clients tell me that I'm great at it, so I'm going to gift you a chance to discuss, how do you better understand your costs? And we're going to do that in a one-to-one conversation. Just you and me, no obligation, no cost, and you can come away knowing what your number one issue is in your business and what you can do to fix it. Because if you don't even know what the challenge is, how can you meet it? As I said, this is just the beginning, and I applaud you for being here. It's a lot to cover in a short period of time. So this is your opportunity to say yes, to continue the conversation, to understand and identify where costs are costing you and what you can do to fix the situation. I would normally charge $500 for these sessions, but I want to reward you for being here. And not only for being here, but for being here December 13th in the height of holiday season. So I'm gifting this to you at no cost today. But I've got several other engagements in the next month. I've only got 12 slots available, and we're going to be doing these by phone before the end of the year. So don't sign up if you're not ready to do that. But I'll tell you who these sessions are for real quickly. It's for you if today's webinar really spoke to me and you don't want to sell and you want a business full of profit. I mean, who doesn't want that? It's for you if you're ready to have a frank conversation about your business and determine the best next action that'll yield the biggest results. It's for you if in your heart of hearts, you're saying to yourself, I just freaking don't understand the numbers the way I know I should, and it's time to get past that. It's for you if you need to do something, but you just aren't sure exactly what it is. It's for you if you have an investing in yourself mindset, and when you see you need help, you invest the time, energy, or money necessary to get the help you need. And finally, it's for you if you highly value this offer and fully commit to show up for your strategy session, ready to take action on the suggestions that you receive. And don't worry, this is going to be a sales pitch. That ain't me. It's not my style. If you do want to learn what it'd be like to work with me, we can certainly discuss that on the call. My main objective and my gift is to have you walk away understanding the biggest cost conundrum in your business and what you can do to fix it. So here's how it's going to go down. You go to www.keepmoremoneystrategycall.com, KEEPMOREMONEYSTRATEGYCALL.com, and fill out the form. You get an email with a link to my calendar. Be sure to set the appointment within 3 days, or you're going to risk losing your spot to someone on the waiting list. And believe it or not, there are people who just forget to schedule. So don't forget to schedule. I want to close by saying thank you so much for your attention, for being action takers and leaders, and wanting your business to be ever better and more fun, and with have less stress in it. You guys are fierce, and I got to say, it's an honor spending time with you. So please have a great rest of your day. Take care, and goodbye.